Guys, welcome in. Garden Report.
Yo, what up, dude?
Hey, big day.
Big day.
Celtics history.
Was it
Number
the 18th?
18.
18?
18 for banner 18.
18 for
Wow.
18. That's what the kids say.
18 for 18. They'll do a movie on that someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. So that's where we are.
A lot of excitement in Celtics land. Lillard's coming, right? They got the right coach. I mean, the fans are just ecstatic today.
Yeah, I mean,
ecstatic and denial, one or the other.
Let's hold off. We know the chat's going to go there and the Lillard stuff is going to pop off, but that's friggin' foolishness. But
they're not going to have to trade Brown. They'll get him without trading Brown, right?
Yeah, definitely.
A couple expirings.
But yeah, that stuff's happening. Anyway, we'll start with what we have today. What's up, everybody? As people are kind of leaking in. It's a Monday. What are we doing here? I don't know. Wait, what? There's a garden report.
98 degrees outside here right now in New England.
It was a tough one out there.
Tomorrow's going to be just as hot. Wednesday's going to be just as hot.
I just went for I rode my bike to the gym. It's only like 3.5 miles. It's not far. I walked into the gym drenched. They were looking at me like, what's wrong with this dude?
Dude,
I was like, do you have towels? And they're like, we don't do towels anymore. And I was like, oh my God. And I'm just grabbing napkins and I'm like patting myself down and everyone's looking at me like, this guy's not right.
Dude, that's how we used to look at you at NBC when you would come in. You'd come into work off the bike.
I forgot
you used to drive
you
his
did that.
bike to work.
Yeah.
He came in looking like there was a thunderstorm outside.
I know. What's
was
funny is like
shower.
There was a shower.
He didn't use it.
I just splash the pits and move on. But no, but Jimmy, the funny thing is like it would take me 2 hours. It was like a 22-mile ride. It would take me an hour.
No joke.
It would take me an hour and a half to get there, but I was that drenched like 7 minutes into the ride.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh God. But anyway, so that's what we got. Ime Udoka is here. We knew this, obviously. But the Celtics introduced him. It's interesting. We're all in on that press conference, Bobby, and Jimmy saw it after the fact. Josue is in there watching it live, seeing how he reacts. It is interesting. A lot of the stuff we're talking about with Udoka is how is he going to be 1 foot over? He's been in the assistant chair. He's in the big chair. The spotlight is on him. How's he going to handle being the final word, being the guy, and all of those things? And how is he going to comport himself here, to the media? And really the first time, people knew things about him, but have you heard him talk before? Have you heard much from him? Really no. It's really everybody's first chance to kind of get to know him a little bit. And again, an incredibly short press conference for 4 people talking 20 something minutes, but whatever. But you got a taste. Of Udoka today. And it's just a press conference. It's hard to say he didn't get an A++ in terms of saying the right things. Horrible coaches who've been fired 15 games into their tenure have also said all the right things. That doesn't mean he's going to be, but he hit the right notes. He said a lot of the right things. So we want to talk about that. But guys, just first impressions, just watching him up there, and the vibe you got, just kind of like, hey, this is our guy. This is the coach.
Yeah, Bob.
Jimmy, what you got?
No, well, you saw it live, so I'll let you go first.
All right, yeah, it seemed to almost perfectly fit the description of what Brad was looking for when we first heard from him as GM, as far as what we were looking for in a head coach. Some of those similarities, a defensive emphasis, a lot of the same stuff we talked about last week. You had a pretty good idea back then of what he was, just based off his responsibilities in those last stops. And then today you hear about, hard-nosed basketball, defense, ball movement. That little quip at Brad was so funny. And, you did hear that edge to him, just like, I'm going to be on these guys. These guys asked in the interview process for tough coaching, and I'm going to provide it to them here. So pretty much everything that Celtics fans wanted in terms of their dissatisfaction with Brad, you heard him talking about here today. And it did seem like he was just hitting every spot in terms of those job description attributes that the Celtics and really their fans were looking for. It was exciting to listen to. I know it's just lip service until it plays out on the court, but it does kind of feel like that fresh refresh that everybody's been waiting for, even Brad. And I know it was probably a little embarrassing for Brad to be up there hearing about that last team and the things that didn't go right. But, this is what he signed up for.
Yeah, I mean, I joked about that in the press in tweets earlier. Like, what an interesting thing this is that the guy, even in the interview process, I thought it was so interesting that Udoka would be the guy who would be like, okay, what do you want to do different than the last guy? You mean you, Brad? It's an awkward situation even in the interview, because you basically you can't possibly give your vision without kind of sort of panning what you saw last year. And he did take that dig, and we'll play that a little bit later, but it is really hard. He is walking a little tightrope here with Brad right next to him as the guy who hired him and also could fire him, so you have to be a little bit respectful of that. So he can't really go all in about new direction, but he did mention a couple of things there.
Yeah, we're definitely an interesting / weird dynamic to have. But I'm sure, listen, Brad's an adult. Brad knows where things went wrong. You don't think he knows the stats. You don't think he knows they were 27th and all that stuff. Of course, he knows that stuff, and he knows where they need to improve. So I'm sure they were able to sit down and hash out, this is where, we fell short. This is where I think we can improve. And this is how I think I can help do that. So I definitely got that vibe. I was impressed because it felt like they got the guy they wanted based on the way Brad spoke, based on what Wick had to say with the whole, 2-hour conversation, and he wanted to, speak for another 2 hours. Whether we should
get an apartment together, all right.
Yeah, I mean,
another Wick is. I gotta go, buddy. Right.
Wick's like, we'll sit around over a bottle of tequila, by the way, that I own and I want to distribute. But
Tres Comas.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
No,
it's called Cinco Oro. It's called Cinco Oro. I went into a Wick rabbit hole last night. We'll get into it later.
Tres Comas is a Silicon Valley reference for a guy who's basically playing a Mark Cuban spoof. And that's the name of his tequila because he's a billionaire. He's got 3 commas. But anyway.
So anyways, it felt like, my point was, it felt like this is the guy that they wanted, and they definitely went through the whole process, the vetting process, and they interviewed, I'm sure they interviewed, many, many candidates, and, Ime was the one that rose to the top. And so, I'm definitely, I think all these Celtics fans are extremely happy and, going to give this guy a chance to show what he's capable of. He's been in the NBA for a long period of time. He's coached underneath some of the greats. Popovich obviously has won, and he was with the Nets this year. So he knows how to manage big egos. He knows how to coach up, guys that you probably know less about. So you certainly have a mix of that on this Celtics team. So, the other thing that was clear to me, it seems like a change was definitely needed, right, from a coaching standpoint. And what we are hearing, or what it sounds like we're hearing, is that, these guys, Tatum and Brown, they want to be pushed. They want to be, the heat put on them, and, make them work for it. And maybe that was something that Brad couldn't get through to them.
Yeah, and that's a big one, and I want to hit that in a minute. But I just real quick, I agree there, Jimmy. I was going back and forth in my head. Was this their guy? Because we were led to believe like Billups was already set to the Trailblazers a couple of weeks ago, and that the Celtics were going to get second choice, which seemed odd because it felt like the Celtics had the best job. When Milwaukee advanced to the conference finals and was favored to go to the finals, it looked like that job had closed up. So I would have felt the Celtics was clearly the top job based on everything, situation, whatever, all of that stuff. And we were thinking, wow, it's strange that they're not going to get top pick, that the Billups, who might be the hottest commodity, is going somewhere. Right. I really wonder how much all of the stuff surrounding Billups really came up in the last little bit and might have helped push Udoka over the top, or flat out, he was always the guy. But I feel more confident that he was their guy outright, not a consolation prize, not that they knew Billups was going to Portland, so they moved on. I actually do think this was their guy now, based just on how they moved, how they acted, the way they're talking about it, and all of that
and
stuff.
The timing too.
Yeah, and then also jumping out ahead of it. It now feels like Portland was like, okay, we'll do it. And then they kind of were left holding the bag with the shitstorm that Lillard is facing right now.
The other thing I guess I just didn't think
Lillard, that Billups is facing now.
Yeah. The other thing that I didn't think of is that Ime has a bit of a history with some of these Celtics players from Team USA last year. I didn't even put that connection together. But
that was a big thing.
So does the new assistant now, too.
Yeah, right. That was the big thing. But at first, when they were going through the candidates, I didn't really connect the two. But knowing that, I mean, and I'm sure, and I think we all know that Tatum and Brown were, involved in this process in some way, and they wouldn't have signed off on this if they didn't, enjoy that experience of whatever value he was able to add to that team while they were playing it. So there's already a little bit of that going into the season. So they're not starting from scratch there either. So I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also hinted at, and I wish he elaborated a little bit more on it, but he hinted at him having some sort of role on this Olympic staff. I know that Lloyd Pierce and Jay Wright and Steve Kerr are the assistants on that roster, but is he going to go out there as sort of like a Tatum, assistant? They're pretty limited in terms of what staff they can bring out here with the COVID stuff out there in the Olympics, but he seemed to hint at them possibly working together in some capacity on the Olympics. Maybe it'll be over Zoom or something, but that was good to hear. Whatever they can possibly do to, keep building that cohesion and good feelings into the season. You almost wish a few more guys were on that Olympic roster with Tatum out there to get ahead on that. Brown probably would have been out there if he wasn't hurt, but I love that too, Jimmy. Just not just the fact that it's a Popovich guy and that he knows him already, but that was just such a good experience for Tatum, Brown, Kemba back then, and Smart. Like, they came out of that and hit the ground running in that 2020 season.
Right.
I thought that was such a positive experience for all of them, just in terms of figuring out how to play to each other. And, whether or not you think Beal could possibly be in their future, that might be something that plays out there on the Olympic roster. That's really the first time they'll be playing organized basketball together, Beal and Tatum, that is. So, I love that international stuff, as you guys know, but I think that's very important, even though our boss Nick can't stand it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a good thing. And, in addition to I like the idea of Udoka being out there with Jayson as a possible recruiting tandem, because that to me is like our awesome player friendly coach that totally has our back, who we love, and me and Jalen and all of that stuff, for sure. Now, we did talk about some of the stuff that you talked about. Here's a little taste for those guys who didn't see the press conference. This was one of the things we were talking about that we thought was kind of fun and funny. When he was asked about, things that he would improve with the team. This is Ime Udoka talking about how he wants to see the team share the ball a little bit better.
As far as stamp on the team, what I was as a player was a, tough, hard-nosed player, defensive-minded, but I love the offensive side as well. I've done defense the last 2 years in Philadelphia and Brooklyn, but for seven years in San Antonio, I was doing offense and defense. And so, we want to have a well-rounded team. Looked at the numbers overall. Sorry to mention this, Brad, but 27th in assists last year. We want to have more team basketball there, but at the same time, you have to understand what your personnel dictates, and that's Jayson, Jalen, and guys that can really score the basketball at elite level. So you play toward their strengths. Obviously, we'll have a defensive mentality going in, and I like to try to bring the dog out in guys, and we got some young dogs here, and look forward to pushing them.
Boom, roasted.
Some young dogs.
Oh, my goodness.
See it, Brad. Suck it,
roasted,
Brad.
Suck it, Brad. Oh, in your face. I mean,
that kind of this was, I know we always have to stymie the hype around these press conferences and these statements and stuff like that, but this really did seem to kind of reflect his personality. He's gonna kind of tell it like it is to people.
Maybe. I want to see. He had a little bit of a quiver in his voice. He was definitely a little bit nervous almost throughout the whole thing. That doesn't mean anything other than, wow, I'm talking.
This is happening.
All the attention is on me. It's never been on me before. That's not a thing. It probably 10 press conferences from now, whatever. But I do
and it's
like
not
going
to always be about him, this
not,
was literally about him.
Then he gets to talk about, right. It's
different.
embarrassing, right? You're like, tell us about why you're awesome. And you got to sit there and do it,
Yeah,
while not bashing this guy and not sounding like a douche that you're complimenting yourself.
Right.
And, right. It's a weird thing. But I like that. I like the fact that he's like, that sucked last year. But that was the thing. I mean, to no end, how frustrated were we? Why won't they do the thing that Brad wants them to do? Oh my God, play with tempo, pass the ball,
Play with effort.
That's one of the three big questions I still had out of today is, all right, it's easy to say Brad didn't do this thing. I'm going to come in here and emphasize this. But you don't think Brad was emphasizing that all year? Like, you think their assist rate went over his head? Yeah.
I do. So it's one thing to say it, it's another to do it. I mean, it's again, this is where we said it's put up or shut up time with the young guys. You got your guy. You endorsed him. You basically told Brad, we want you to hire this guy, which means you've got to do what he says. And if you don't, it's on you now, because you failed. Oh, well, Brad couldn't reach us. He wasn't the guy we needed. Great. Here's your guy. There's no excuse now. That's what I like most about it is you give the players the choice. Now they have to live with it. And they've got to execute. If he says play hard on defense, I don't care if you think your job is to score 27 points a game. I'd rather you score 24 points a game and give me some effort on defense. That's what I want you to be. I want you to be Jimmy Butler. That's what I want. 21 points a game, but be a dog all day, all game long. I'll play you 36 minutes, and I want max effort, start to finish. That's how we'll be better. Will you do that? Will you allow your stats to suffer if that's what's called for? Maybe. I don't know. Or it's like, I kind of settled into my role of being like a 30-point per game guy. So can the other guys play defense? That's not going to work, right? So I don't know. I mean, I'm curious if that's what he's going to want out of these guys.
Well, the Nets didn't play a ton of defense this year, so
and
I don't know if we can go on that.
And the Philly thing didn't really work out great either.
They weren't a great defensive team either, yeah.
No.
So those are the recent – and, he was – he didn't last long in Philly for whatever reason. He ended up in Brooklyn. I mean –
Because Brown got fired.
Yeah. But sometimes the staff sticks around after. But, the most recent examples of hard-nosed, tough, in-your-face defense aren't really there. But certainly in San Antonio, there are examples of that. And I don't know how much of that is Pop and how much of that is Ime. But either way, I mean, this guy's going to get his opportunity. And the players, like you said, John, this is their guy. Everyone say, oh, well, just hire the guy the players want. I don't think it went that far. But this was a coach that
was me, by the way. You were imitating me.
Well, you're one of those people for sure.
I was one of those.
Nothing else matters. Just whoever they say they want, hire him. Yeah. I don't think it got to that point, but I do think the players obviously.
Jimmy just pulled an Ime
stamp of approval. Yeah, and and now it's on them to do that. Pick up on their end. This guy obviously has been around the game. He's coached for years and years and years. I think he's extremely qualified and suitable to coach an NBA team. So the players are going to have to, hold up their end of the bargain here. You want this guy to come in and coach, then be coached. Allow him to coach you.
Yeah. And so as far as those guys go, there's a couple things that I find interesting. One, flat out, the message to these guys was, you're supposed to be good. And so you're already elite stars. What are we waiting for? And that was one of the narratives last year was Jalen and Jayson don't have help. There's people in the chat right now saying the same thing. Who do they have to pass to? Blah, 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 X, Y, and Z. It shouldn't matter that much in the sense of this wasn't the worst roster in the NBA around 2 stars. They were fine. There was better. There was clearly worse, okay? They had other professional basketball players on the court with them. These are 2 studs. What are we waiting for at this point? Like 2 stars and good enough should be good enough. And 2 stars and some really good players like Rob playing at his best, Kemba when he was on, Fournier. There was quality basketball players in there.
Smart,
the bench was
quality players.
Marcus Smart. What are we talking about here? This was a real professiontional basketball team. The excuse making was off the charts last year. So Jimmy, go ahead. I know you're trying to get in there.
Well, it's not always the result. It's you lose a game, sometimes. It's how you lost that game. And for me, it was the moping, it was the effort, it was the inconsistency on both ends of the court. It was like what Bobby racked his head on all year, the defense or the lack thereof. It's like, yeah, talent is one thing, but effort's a completely different topic and discussion. And that's where I really felt this team fell short. I mean, yeah, NBA talent always wins out. We get it. None of us thought the Celtics were an NBA title contending team, I don't think, at least certainly not early on in the season. We realized they weren't if you were one of the people who didn't think they were going in. But it was the way they didn't show up to certain games. It was the way they played one-player basketball, my turn, your turn. We talked about that so much this year. So, yeah, you can talk about talent. They weren't the deepest team. They weren't even close. But there was enough talent available on any given night to put in better performances than they were. I mean, they'd go down 25 points in the first half and then claw their way back. I mean, that's type of stuff that would drive you crazy.
That deficit stat was astonishing. I don't have it right in front of me, but we all remember tracking that one throughout the year, the percentage of games that they went down by like 10 plus in or something like that. Yeah. That was – it was a mix last year of obviously effort issues, consistency, focus, those things, and then all the unfortunate circumstances and roster issues that I think were perfectly valued. It's perfectly, valid. I don't think it's smart
the roster
for them
thing is bothering me though, Bobby. The excuse making with the roster is again Phoenix
from the
Suns
beginning of the year, John. When they're starting Semi and
I know,
all
but
those
the
guys.
Phoenix Suns are a win away from the finals, and they're starting Jay Crowder, and they're playing.
Crowder's great.
Oh, give me a break. He's great. Yeah, let's not call
the
him.
Celtics would have been in a much better position.
The Celtics would have been great with James Crowder being their 8th guy. He's starting on a team about to go to the finals.
He's a great role
player. They've got
got
Cameron Payne playing significant minutes.
This is the second team in a row Crowder's going to the finals on.
Cameron Payne playing significant minutes on this team. He was a G Leaguer a year ago. Like, don't tell me that the Celtics roster was so bad right now. There's teams still playing that aren't – they're not – flush with talent up and down the roster.
But their third guy is a number 1 pick.
That's fine. Their third guy is the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a much better team than the Celtics.
It's not a much better team than the Celtics.
Their third guy is Rob. If Rob's healthy, that's their third guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point from last year is that you did not have the full roster intact for really any of the year. So I still think some of the excuses from last year were valid. Obviously, the consequences that were handed out reflected it being a little deeper than the excuses there. It's not going to be all that valuable for them to belabor on last year because the roster is going to be much different and the expectations are going to be understandably higher.
It makes no sense
you want to bounce back from last year.
Last year should be dead to everybody.
So at this point, you do expect this team with a much more intact and cohesive and forward-thinking mindset to be much better. Probably the 4th seed, you would want to see them at worst with this roster. So what you're saying, John, is true. Last year really doesn't matter all that much. Now they can move forward.
The Suns,
which I think is the best part about
the Suns are better than the Celtics. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
But I'm saying they're going to the finals, and the Celtics were like, "Woe is me." It's not the drop off between a title team and the Celtics. Outside of the top 2-3 players is not that dramatic. So let's not overdo it. Everyone's saying they're ass, like they had the worst roster outside of Jalen and Jayson, are wrong. You're flat out wrong.
Right.
You're wrong. You're wrong. They're not. They weren't.
They're wrong.
They had at least a middle of the road, if not upper middle roster surrounding their 2 stars. Their biggest problem was the inconsistency and the COVID and this and that.
And the health and everything.
But you guys you're literally wrong. Yeah.
Here's going to be the biggest.
Literally.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Everybody's wrong. Just look at the players. They're not that bad.
Well, this will be the biggest answer to that.
We're going to let Sherrod in here, too.
Does Udoka get something out of the 4 young guys? That's going to be the biggest question we answer when it comes to could they have done something more with last year? Because we know how Brad treated young players. For the most part, I mean, there were a few that broke through. We know Pritchard got that early opportunity. But overall, I think most people look at Brad's tenure and say the young players really got a tough break there when it came to minutes and opportunity, especially on the later teams.
Everyone just looks at Grant and Semi and freaks the fuck out, and that's what it comes down to because those guys played minutes early in the year when people were injured, and that's all anybody sees. Like the Grant and Semi.
Well, you talked about it too.
Yeah, of course, it was a disaster, but that was again partially to do with injuries.
Well, that's another question.
Some of it was stubbornness too, though. Don't forget, a lot of it was stubbornness, and that's Brad got himself into some trouble on his own.
A lot of it was stubbornness. He didn't play kids, didn't play Rob enough, and
is Udoka going to be Udoka going to be a guy who favors the kids? It's a big question.
No,
we'll see. Sherrod, opening thoughts before you dive into what the madness we're in now. Your first impressions on Udoka today, just the way he handled himself and his message. Again, it's just words, but he's pretty on point with a lot of what he talked about. We talked a little bit about the message to Jalen and Jayson, but anything that stood out to you?
Well, I think he understands first and foremost that he has to make sure that Jayson and Jalen, and let me say that again, Jayson and Jalen are on board with whatever he's trying to do. I think that they're understanding that we're not going to go anywhere as an organization if my 2 best players aren't rowing in the same direction. That to me is someone who has been in the Popovich system and knows how important having your core guys is to your overall team success. I think that's something that Brad, I don't think fully understood from the perch that he was in, that now that he's had a chance to take a step back and look at the whole, landscape as opposed to being on the ground with the troops, I think he realizes that, oh crap, it really does matter that Jaylen and Jayson need to feel a certain way about who I bring in here. Otherwise, we got a crap storm like they got in Portland, or we've got a situation where we have a coach in a situation that from the very beginning they're playing catch up to. From the beginning, they're trying to bring guys in, and that's not the way you want to begin your tenure. You need guys on board from day one. And I think what he said, the way he carried himself, I think he understands that, and I think he's placating himself to that.
I like it, Sherrod.
But he's not going to play the young guys. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I disagree.
No?
He talked about them today.
Let me be clear about this. Let me be clear. He's not going to play them significantly more than we've seen with Brad. This is the thing that the problem that most of the Celtics young guys, their biggest problem, they don't have a particularly strong individual skill. If you had a guy who was a great rebounder or had great court vision or had something that was exceptional and it was something that the Celtics absolutely needed in order to be competitive, you would see those guys play more. Like Shimmy, for example. The reason Shimmy was playing early on was because they needed a
What about Pritchard's shooting, though?
What's that?
Pritchard's shooting? I'd probably include that in something that breaks above the average level for a player.
But the problem that they had with that is you still had this kid named Kemba Walker around, and Kemba was going to play the bulk of the minutes. You weren't going to play him and Pritchard together that much. So if you have to play one or the other, and they're both relatively healthy at the same time, then you would play Kemba. But my issue with Brad was when Kemba wasn't healthy, I thought that was when we should have seen more of Pritchard.
Yeah, he never started.
We rarely saw him start. Yeah,
and I don't know if he starts. I just wanted to play more.
He started him twice. One time when Kemba was out. The other time is when everyone was out. But like on all of those Kemba back-to-backs, he just wouldn't do it. Even when Smart was missing, he was starting Teague, and we were like, "What in the world are you doing?"
Rob's the big one.
You're thinking, what do I need to do? I mean, what the hell do I need to do to get some burn here? You got guys who are out. I'm making shots. What's the problem?
Yeah, and I do put a pretty hard line between Rob and the rest of those guys because I still look at the rest of those guys
in the chat. Hold on, guys. Shut up with Cornette. We're not comparing the Suns players to Luke Cornette. My God, you're grabbing guys.
Is that Bobby's burner account?
John's getting dragged in the comments right now.
You're grabbing the guys who are 13, 14, 15 on the Celtics roster and comparing them to Phoenix's 6, 7, and 8. Shut up. Oh, my God.
I don't know, John. Phoenix starting five is real solid.
Phoenix starting five. Like I said, if you put the Celtics' best players
up pull up
there,
your roster right now.
You're starting Jay Crowder. You're playing Cameron Payne 20 minutes a game. Okay?
Champagne with the campaign.
Oh, my God.
Hey, that was a
I love
favorite players of watching the playoffs.
But everyone's like, Luke Cornette. Shut up. Oh, my God. Listen, I did want to ask about this because this was interesting. We talked about this a good deal, right? We talked about this a lot. Like Jaylen and Jayson. However, in the last week or so, it wasn't Jaylen and Jayson. It was Jaylen and Jayson and Marcus. And now you have this. That's what you've heard. Jaylen, Jayson, and Marcus like this guy. I spoke to Jaylen, Jayson, and Marcus about Udoka.
Is that what we're doing now?
No, but you've noticed that, right? That's been a thing. Jaylen, Jayson, and Marcus. And even today, these three, as if they are the three leaders, okay? Brad mentioned those guys as well. So it is interesting. Is this about, like, we don't know what's going on with Marcus Smart, but I think
it's Smart. I think it's Smart just because if Smart's gonna
does that mean he's here? And does that mean he factors into their long-term plans? Like, if you think you're trading him this year because you don't want to resign him, you don't give a shit what he thinks about the next coach, right?
I know, but I don't think you're sure the deal's there yet.
You're not.
Right. Which is why you want to make sure as best you can that you keep him happy, you keep him content, you play the game to make sure that he's feeling as though everything is good to go Team Ubuntu.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, you get a deal for a player that you think can help you more,
Kyle Lowry.
Oh, Bobby.
Here we go.
First the burner account with the Luke Cornett stuff, and now the Kyle Lowry stuff. Damn it.
It's been an eventful show. We're only 30 minutes in.
Gosh.
Who's the
Hey.
I'll wait on that.
I'm relatively okay with Smart being the starting point guard if it comes to that next year. Unlike John, I do think he has the passing chops, the floor vision, the facilitating skills to get that done. And I've been excited for a long time about that prospect of him getting open reign there. But you do have to really assess his future. And I've said this since the trade deadline. Like, there's going to be opportunities out there if you get aggressive enough to package him and other young guys, picks, those kind of things into a third piece here. I think there'll be options this offseason to do something like that. But do you want him as part of a core for a big three beyond that? You really have to placate him here if you're going to do that, because he's going to have to ultimately take less money at that point to stay with a big three core. And this is a guy who already feels like he didn't make enough money on his last deal. So, you're going to have to go the extra steps to really make him feel involved and part of that leader structure over this next year. Because, if everything we're reading's been true, he felt a little bit spited the last 2 years in terms of how the other players on the team were taking his leadership and criticism and those kind of things. So, this situation with him this next year or so is going to be so difficult to navigate. I wonder if you almost try to get the best you can for him now just because of how tough it's going to be to really emphasize his place in that room, because if everything we're reading is true, the other players weren't having it this year with him.
Well, the one thing that we know right now from the jump is that if a deal comes by and Brad thinks it's a pretty good deal, he's not hesitating. He's not gonna waffle and let it marinate over days and kick around the reams and reams and reams of analytics that tell you what we all would figure out from the eye test. He's gonna pull the trigger. And so I'm not worried about Marcus Smart as far as the role that he's gonna have, because if he's gonna have a role, then it's gonna be pretty much what we've seen in the past. And if Brad and I don't think that's working, Brad, who has the final say in that stuff, is going to pull the trigger.
So those are the two other questions that were really burning in my mind today that I couldn't get through with. What's Udoka's vision for Smart in terms of his role, his leadership position on this team, and how much input is Udoka himself going to have on the roster? That's a question I have too here. Does he agree with everything on Brad? Is he going to be leaving everything to Brad?
I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't. I hope he pushes back when he feels that he needs to and is comfortable doing so. And I think he will. Because you look at where he's coming from as a player. This guy played, before he got to the NBA, as an undrafted player. He was at 3 different colleges. How many guys wind up in the NBA who weren't
He's been everywhere.
Yeah, and so the fact that he's part of the Popovich family tree, he has seen really good players come in and take on humble roles because that was the best thing for the team. And so I think if let's say they're looking to make a deal for a player who maybe isn't quite as talented as Marcus, but maybe be a better fit, or someone who is significantly better than Marcus, but it's going to cost them a crap load of money, I think Udoka is I think he's ideally suited to handle those changes better than Brad, I think, was able to handle the changes that Danny threw his way, because Udoka has the benefit of being a former player, being an assistant coach who's been in the locker rooms, he's been in those huddles. He has a better feel for how to manage unexpected change than his predecessor.
But he also says he wants to play with, he wants them to play strong defense. He wants them to play tough and all this stuff. And that's kind of what Marcus Smart brings to the table. It's just, to me, about if you can rein in Marcus Smart on offense, if Udoka can do that.
I know, but how much can he do?
What does that mean, though? What does that
mean? It means stop jacking shots when it really shouldn't be your night to be jacking shots, which is pretty much every.
This is my worry,
Be
Jimmy.
more of a distributor. If you are going to be the starting point guard, you know that you need a point guard who needs to distribute the ball. He needs to be pass first, which means not 8 3-pointers a game, not jogging down the court and hoisting up threes, heat checking, not taking shots away from the Jays. You need to distribute the ball, get them the ball, get Jayson Tatum the ball off of screens and this and the other thing. Don't make Jayson Tatum be the guy who has to run the offense so he doesn't walk the ball up and get them in their sets with 10 seconds to go. That's what Marcus Smart needs to be able to do.
But
If
Jimmy,
he can't do
here's
that,
the
then
difficult
I would
thing.
be fine trading him.
Smart's the best they have, but he's not what you want running the show.
But here's the thing,
ideal.
John.
So come on. It's not. He's the best that they have by miles.
You're asking him to do something that is not in his.
It's not him, man.
It's that's my point.
Then why would you want him?
Because he does better.
He have nothing better, and he does a million things well.
You trade him, and you get something else.
We're back to what is his value. You're talking about a guy in a walk.
I think his value is higher than you think it, John.
I do too.
I don't think so, guys. I don't think so. And if you do, you're getting a pick. What you can trade is strength for strength. If a team needs a Marcus type guy but has too many of one type thing, that's great.
An advantage, yeah.
Are you gonna find that? I don't know. That's the thing. Like, you might find a player for player swap, but then that team's also got to talk about re-signing him, and that's another issue. And you don't have those assurances. The price goes way down when you don't know what you're acquiring if it's going to be here after this year. Way down. So you got to know he's coming and he's going to stay. Otherwise, it's really hard to get something of value there. So he's the best you have. You got to find other creative ways to get another proper point guard in here, or you just live with Marcus for this year and address it in full a season from now. And that's most likely what's going to happen.
I agree, John. I agree.
Yeah.
Most likely, it's always most likely that they don't trade the guy. I think everyone can agree there, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to at least. Yeah, it is. That doesn't mean that it's not possible that they can make that happen. Here's the other thing, though.
Maybe.
Do they have to trade? Do they have to trade Marcus Smart? No. There's one player I think they do have to trade. You guys know who that is?
Tristan.
Oh, it's Tristan.
Yeah, Tristan.
Well,
so can they trade him and maybe toss a young player?
So that's the other factor.
That was interesting today because Bobby pointed this out. There were a lot of people they talked about in this press conference today. There is one name we did not hear mentioned a single time, and that was
Tristan.
Not once.
Mr. Party Animal.
Oh, we knew weeks ago he was gone.
Does he even check in?
Single Tristan now.
Does anybody even call him and be like, "Hey, what's up? I'm the new coach," or is he just gone?
Does he pick up? I don't know.
We know what Tristan's been up to.
Yeah, he might be busy.
Right.
Oh boy.
He might be busy.
You guys are awful.
I've seen some of these mansions that he's been partying in. I wouldn't pick up the phone either. But anyways, can they trade him? Yes, they have. You're probably not going to win that deal, but you got to get out from underneath that.
Joey in the chat, you got one more chance, buddy. That's all I'm saying. Okay. The timeout was a warning. You got one more chance, buddy. Anyway, keep going, guys.
Ooh, Joey.
So there is.
Yeah, one more chance.
There is a significant inroad with Smart too, because when you combine Smart and Thompson's salary, that's a significant salary you can bring back in terms of one stroke of the pen right now. All of a sudden, you can bring someone in who makes as much as like $31 million if you trade them together with picks and these sort of things.
Right.
There's a lot of evidence here that you should push Smart, Thompson together heavily with picks now and kind of consolidate the roster. Maybe some young guys that other teams like that you might not be all that sold on. Maybe even Rob if he pushes you over the finish line of a deal for a guy that you really want right now. The tough thing is, if you're over the next month, they really need to get a good idea of if they think they could make that pursuit for Beal and free agency, because if you do that, you kind of hold the phone on everything. You keep Smart around with that flexibility. You just kind of make this a little bit of a bridge here, because if you can get some idea of if he would possibly be interested, there's nothing better than a guy coming and signing outright with you giving up nothing. It's tough though, because if he's not coming and you leave that Smart thing on the table now, and you start to pile up all these restrictions that Jimmy talked about with him, all right, we're not going to sign you this extension. You're not going to shoot as much. You're not going to be the guy on he'll just leave at some point if he gets pissed off enough, and that's another free agent out the door for nothing.
You talking about Marcus?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Marcus. Somebody said earlier, it's Marcus contract year. So is he going to be looking to, show that he can do all these things, and he's not going to want to just be the defensive anchor or the distributor? What Marcus Smart is going to be joining.
Bringing him into the room without the extension is going to be a really tricky proposition.
Yeah.
Listen, I would agree. I mean, I think Smart's probably the best player available for them. But all I'm saying is, if I mean, they know more than we do. You know, if they think it's not if the fit isn't there, if something's not clicking between him and other players, then why would they go through another season of it? Why would they? I just don't get it.
They might have a feeling already that doesn't work, but you don't give up Smart for nothing.
Or no, I'm not saying that. I'm not telling them
isn't a good fit either.
And that's the thing, Jimmy. Let's just assume that there are these issues, okay? And you need to move on from him. You're not going to give him up and lose that trade significantly because he's too good, and his contract is too good to just not.
That's the thing too. I mean, he really is,
because he's got a great contract right now. If you moved him now, but teams know that if you are in a win now mode, okay, and you've got the ability to bring him in, knowing that you could potentially lose him in the offseason because he wants too much damn money, you would make that deal. You would make a deal with them to get him because Marcus has value, but the question mark with him and a lot of players is what he thinks his value is and what a lot of teams think it is in his next deal are not on the same page. Right. Not even close. But at this point, right now, he is a bargain with the money that he's making currently.
Which makes him valuable.
The challenge for the Celtics will be moving him and getting something of significant value in return because folks know that signing him, you're probably not going to get done what he's looking to get done. And if you're the Celtics, you're not going to give him away and not get something of value in return because you'll be better off keeping him, losing him for nothing, than cutting him loose and getting less than what you should get in return. You are going to lose that deal.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's when we say no value, we mean not equal value. It doesn't mean you get. That's what we mean. It doesn't mean you get nothing in return. It's just you're right. Marcus Smart is and has always been more valuable to the Celtics than he would be on any trade, in any package for any other team. And again, it keeps coming back to the same thing we always talk about is if he was a free agent, he will garner interest. As a trade, you have to give up something also, and you don't know if you can re-sign him, which suppresses his value. It's just simple. I mean, logic. That's just how these trades work. Yeah, a guy who you don't have to give up anything for.
Every situation.
And as a free agent, he will garner interest because there's a lot of teams that want a Marcus Smart type player. In a trade, it's much different. I just don't see a trade involving Marcus Smart that makes you better unless it's a large trade where there's some movement, multiple teams, and you have to move salaries in pieces. And, but it's a really hard thing to do. It's going to be really hard. I don't see a way in which they don't ride out the season with Marcus, like Sherrod said. I think that's likely. I think that's likely what's going to happen.
I think it's likely too. It's just a matter of then you're looking at the team you see now is pretty much the team you're going to see.
Yeah.
Because there's not that many other players you can even dangle out there that are going to bring you back anything. Marcus Smart's one of them. Mm-hmm. Tristan Thompson might be gone, but they're not going to. They could just get rid of Tristan Thompson and not even fill that with a player. You know
because they already have filled it. But
right.
I don't know. That's going into the season with Smart, especially on an expiring deal, is going to be risky. All the questions he's going to face throughout the year, and if things get dicey in that room again, and say you take it to this deadline, that's when the value really takes a hit in terms of him being an expiring contract. He's a rental for any team that would be taking him at that point. See, I don't agree with you on that trade situation, John, because I think you're at a moment where you can package him with other things, so many different things at this point, with a younger player, with picks, with Thompson, certainly from a salary perspective. Like, this is your time right now because, if we all agree Thompson's gone, you're passing up on a huge opportunity in terms of salary being able to be brought back in if you're just throwing that $9 million away. I know you think that it's going to be a dump situation with him, so you might as well consolidate that to the best deal that you can possibly make right now. My only exception to that is if you really do think Beal's coming, you do have to just kind of kick everything down.
That's where you're stuck. And that's what we said.
It's so hard.
You're stuck.
It's like the Hayward thing all over again.
Do you or Anthony Davis? Do you hold everything because you think something's going to happen that may or may not happen? Then
all of a sudden, Beal gets traded in the middle of the season.
You're gonna find this out about Beal too, which is like, Are they holding the line for that third superstar? Do you stay super lean? Do you not take on any salaries that are going to get you beyond this year, so you have enough in the books to squeeze that third star into the mix?
I think if you have an opportunity now, you have to jump at it. I think, like, if you find a deal right now that you really like, that you think pushes you closer to that contention direction, like Lowry in my mind, I think you just have to do it, because you can't wait again. You can't wait, sit and lose everything just because you're really hoping something pans out. And honestly, does a Beal, Tatum, Brown really guarantee a championship? It obviously is your best bet. But yeah, you're right, Fred. It's not 100%.
There's no guarantees. There's no guarantees, Bobby. Though, I mean, you got to put yourself in the best position to win a championship. You're not gonna ever. You can't wait around for 100%, or you're gonna be waiting around forever. So, I mean, you can't tell me that those three players can't be a good enough foundation to bring you to the NBA Finals. I can't imagine that that's true. I think that if they stay healthy for the bulk of the season and they're healthy in the playoffs, that's a team that nobody wants to play. Rob sticks around.
I think if you bring in a real good third piece right now, even if it isn't necessarily Beal, you're in a close enough position if everything clicks right to at least be a significant percentage of that team. And you keep a Horford around, which I think is important. Obviously, Horford wouldn't be part of that Beal team down the line. You would lose quite a bit of stuff. Rob would walk in free agency. So if you can make a deal right now, along with the depth that you have at this present moment, I think that's going to be the most deep, well-rounded team to make a run and be a little bit sustainable. You know, like if you get a couple of years, couple of different shots with that group and continue to grow young players and that kind of stuff.
But it's the biggest existential question surrounding this team right now is the path to Banner 18 through a third star, or is it through?
18.
Isn't it usually?
Or is it through building around these two with the right parts around them? You know? That's the thing. And yes, the big three term is so friggin' loosely thrown around nowadays. You grab the two best players and then the third best guy who's two tiers below and say, that's their big three, you know, if Rob makes an all-star team or is knocking on the door, is he part of a big three? No, he's just a very good other player in and around them. I mean, you tried to call Kemba and those guys out. I mean, you had a big four with Hayward, you know. So what do you need here? Does it have to be an uber star, or is it better to be Lonzo Ball, you know, theoretically, Ball, Robert Williams playing really well, you know, whatever.
Maybe
I don't know.
It's time to try the other way, you know, and obviously there were
But I mean, you've got two stars. That's good. Yeah. You know, that's pretty good.
Two young stars, absolutely.
But no, I mean, what do you guys think? Does you have to get the third alpha? Or do you need the guy who's actually going to be the alpha and let Jaylen and Jayson just do the things that they do best? And do you need and is Beal that guy? Is he just another scorer? Like, I don't know that Bradley Beal and these two guys is like, okay, print up the T-shirts. They've got it, you know?
Right. I'm not saying that either, but I'm just saying talent-wise, those are three extremely, extremely talented players, all-stars. And when you have three all-stars on your team, you should be in contention every year. That being said, to me, and I think you guys would agree, it's the fit.
And I still think Rob is the third part of the big three.
Yeah, well, we all know that you think that, yeah. To me, it's the fit.
Come on, Sherrod.
If the Celtics had Chris Paul, you know, if they had required Chris Paul, we could be talking about them in the NBA Finals right now. I mean, that, and it's not to say, and Chris Paul has had an amazing year. So, obviously, right? But I'm saying that style of player, that style of point guard makes way more sense than like the Kemba Walker style that they had. Now, at the time, they just got Kemba Walker. What's that?
Oof. The cost really wasn't high for Paul looking back on it.
Right. So yeah, I mean, do they need a third player who can really play ball? Absolutely. But to me, they need a pass first distributing point guard. That's what I'm really looking for. Doesn't need to be an all-star level player. They have two all-stars on their team. They just need to be unlocked further.
Well, let's make this clear too. The move isn't trading Brown for another star. And I think this really needs to be stressed with all this Lillard noise going around. Like other teams, and Sherrod, you can either agree or disagree with me on this because you would know this a little more than me.
Those are your two choices.
Thank you.
But I don't
agree or disagree.
I don't think you just flip Brown for a guy like Lillard. I don't think that's how it would work. I think Portland says, all right, we'll start with Brown, but let's add this and all these first round picks. Like that, it's not going to be that easy of a flip. And I also just think that that's kind of a lateral move when it comes to team building, star for star. You just never see that because one, teams want more because they value their guy more, and two, you're losing a star while gaining a star. So where does that really put you?
Well, here's the thing about stars, Bobby. Every star out there is not equally aligned in the solar system. There are some stars that are better than others. And as much as I love Jaylen and believe in him, and I love the fact that he's gotten better every single year he's been in the NBA, I can't look over at Dame Lillard and be like, nah, we're good. Dame is that dude. If you're talking about superstar players in this league who would benefit and make a team a title contender if they left the current team, Dame is on that short list. He is a closer. He is someone who's not afraid of the moment. And when you look at the talent that he's played with, he's had some pretty good teams, but he hasn't had a team that was great. And when you look at the numbers he puts up, it's clear that he can do a hell of a lot of things on the offensive end of the floor. Defense, I need to see more. Not crazy about him at that end of the floor. But at a minimum, Bobby, you think about that because you're talking about acquiring a star who's a little bit higher in the stratosphere than the star that you'll be moving on from. But to your point, Bobby, you're probably going to have to give up more than just Jaylen. And if that's the case, that's where I have to kind of pump the brakes on that deal. Because I think Jaylen is only going to keep getting better with time. And I think Dame Lillard, as great as he is right now, and as much as I absolutely love Logo Lillard, he's near the top of the mountaintop where at some point, sooner rather than later, he's going to be heading downhill. Mm-hmm. And do you want to be on the hook for him when he's heading downhill? You barely got out of the Kemba deal before Kemba started really taking that slide downhill. Do you want to position yourself to be in that spot again?
It's one thing.
You're talking $50 million for Lillard.
Yeah. Like I said, do you want to be in that spot again with more money?
No.
I want to pull up his contract.
Meanwhile, 25-year-old Jaylen is in Portland, giving them 23, 7, and 7, going to All-Star games. They're getting to the second or third round of the playoffs, and that's your thing.
But that's the thing is you don't need.
I gotta build around Tatum and Brown. We can work on all that other stuff and all the permutations and the analytics and the just however you want to work it. But I'm not moving them two guys.
Right. So if you keep those two guys, if you're building around them, what I think you need is a couple of veterans that can come in and give you good solid minutes, whether it's from the starting position or the bench role, but they can center the team around Jaylen and Jayson, but can feed them the ball, make them the focal point, provide the leadership. Maybe one of those veterans is the talker. Maybe that takes the heat off Jayson Tatum. He doesn't have to be the rah-rah guy, right? Because your best player doesn't have to be your loudest player, It doesn't have to be that way. And look at Kawhi Leonard, a guy like that. He's not the loudest player, but he gets he gets the job done out there. So bringing the types of players that fit.
He plays, you're right.
But that's the thing is, again, if you look at all the teams playing, again, who's got the third star right now, right? Is Ayton the closest of the teams right now?
The Suns have.
The Suns with Ayton might be the closest when you've got Paul and Booker. Atlanta doesn't have a third star.
What do you mean?
Milwaukee's got two, and you're going to give Jrue Holiday as your third star. Is he a star, big 3-star? No, he's an outstanding basketball player.
Right,
very good player. But that's what I mean is do you need? Why does it always have to be a Lillard or a Beal level guy? Like Jrue Holiday is exactly the type of person. They're hard to acquire. The Celtics took a shot at it, but it's like, does it have to be big?
No.
Does it have to be Harden, Durant? It doesn't. It doesn't. You got to get the right pieces and the right players.
Well, you have two really, really good players like you do in Tatum and Brown. That third player doesn't need to be a superstar.
Yeah.
Right? But it needs to.
And I love Jrue Holiday. I love Jrue Holiday, by the way.
I do too.
And you're right, Milwaukee.
Love.
Wish the Celtics could have got him.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the fit right there that we talked about.
Perfect guy.
Yeah. No, but I mean, and Dudley makes a point here. This year's not a year to compare. It's an outlier year, maybe. And sure, Brooklyn Brooklyn steamrolls to a title healthy, and all
I don't know though, because
all we're saying here probably is you need 3 stars to compete with a team like that, and so we'd have a totally different narrative. That's a fair point, because they should have walked. They should have walked into the finals if they were healthy.
Yeah, and they would have, but
they almost did with one guy. You know,
that's such a. We're talking about outliers. I mean, that's an outlier team. If a team gets those 3 players together, there's nothing you can do.
Well, it's literally the best 3 players that have ever been assembled on a single team. I mean, so that's an outlier.
Aside from, Bird and McHale and Pash and those guys. But
you might want to go a little further back with Bill Russell and his crew. I'm just saying. If you want to hit the time machine, Jimmy.
Don't get John going on Bill
time machine.
It's a 6-team league. It was a 6-team league.
Every team had 6 superstars.
If you didn't have 5 all-stars, you literally there's no point to show up.
Your team folded.
So I don't know. I don't know. You'd like to think that you could do it organically through the 2 stars that you have here, but you miss so many opportunities to have augmented that roster by, again, not consolidating picks, maybe drafting.
Yeah, I think you have to start doing
drafting also-ran type players, So something's got to change. You need more impact. You need more impact guys. Rob is an impact guy when healthy. I don't know that he's enough. You need more impact players. And again, you had him. You had Gordon Hayward a year ago. That's an impact player. I mean, you had
when healthy.
You had more juice than you have now. It's hard to find that. That's why we always talk about it's like, is the only way to do it internally? I don't know. Maybe, that's
I
it
don't
right
think
now.
You have enough internally.
You don't. I mean, you've got Fournier, you've got Smart, and then you're preying on the kids and Rob.
We haven't even mentioned Fournier now. That's another guy you could loop into a sign and trade at this moment. Are you really just going to let him walk for nothing now or another TP? That's there's so much to do this offseason. When they said that today, it's so true. There are so many questions that can't wait. They have to address Smart now. They have to address Thompson now. Fournier, that one can't wait at all. So you can't just keep siphoning off all these valuable pieces on your team. You have to take a pivot from what you were doing before, waiting, hoping things develop internally. You have all the time in the world. You have to be a little bit more urgent now. There's got to be things changing in more ways than one. And luckily, we've already seen some of that change, but it can keep going further. And I do think it's going to be a very busy offseason this year.
Cosign.
And I mean, that's where I kind of get stuck. I don't know if it's going to be that busy. They may end up not having
want it to be busy.
They may end up not outside of trading Tristan, which sadly you might have to sell. Give away what
you can't do that.
They may end up doing nothing.
Why not, Bobby?
Because he's this salary thing's so important. If you throw him out the window now, you can't get anything valuable back for Smart later. So all of a sudden you're really buying into Smart at that point because your only 2 medium salaries are Thompson and Smart. So the only way you can bring in a 3rd star is to loop them in with young guys or whatever else right now. So if you're selling Thompson right now, that's just such a waste to me of his salary.
You're saying only get rid of him if you're combining him with Smart to bring back a bigger player is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well,
and obviously you can't bring him into the season.
But how does
Tristan
they sweeten the pot?
Exactly. I think they know that they.
He's not. Guys like that are in deals all the time.
You've got one hope. The only hope the Celtics have is it only takes one. Okay, it takes one dumb team or one insistent player on, can I get my buddy to come play with us over here? And you're hoping that team is the Lakers and that LeBron says, let's get Tristan out here. I want my guy. Other than that, I don't see anybody, lining up for
I
Tristan.
mean, you would probably extend Smart then, John.
I don't give a shit about the tax, so I would extend everybody and keep your good players because it doesn't mean anything. Just keep them.
I mean, that's another way to go.
What do you want to do? You want to save money so you can have a bigger mid-level exception to sign more Tristan Thompsons, or do you want to hold on to players like Smart and Fournier? Hold on to good players, eat the friggin' dollars, and then hope that you can continue to build around it. Or go lean as hell because you're hoping to sign a big fish a couple of years from now. I just don't. You got to make a choice, right?
Yeah,
if you let these guys
should
walk,
get off the pot.
Yeah, should get off the pot. It's like,
hey, I like keeping.
We have
Fournier,
good players. We got to keep them. Re-sign Rob and say that's what you got.
But the issue is this: okay, you re-sign your good players, but does that make it good enough though? Because if it doesn't, then there's a case to be made to not do exactly what you're saying to do and be one of those teams that's just stuck in the tax playing a bunch of mediocre players and not getting anywhere.
It's hard because you never really got a sense in my mind of how good that core could be.
This was always the problem. This was the problem at the trade deadline, right? When we're assessing the trade, I'm saying we're stuck in mediocrity here. Like the reality was if you re-sign Fournier, that means and you have to re-sign Smart theoretically, then you're going to have an extremely expensive non-contending team. That's the fear, But if you don't sign them, you get demonstrably worse almost right away. Because there's no real way to replace them. So I don't know. Sherrod, I want you to blink if you're
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't. I mean, you just can't. You can't win.
It's tough. You're stuck.
You're stuck. You're jammed.
They've been stuck.
Thanks, Danny.
Where do you have an idea of what?
I keep coming back to it, Bobby. That's why I keep saying that I'm not saying it will happen, but the only hope that they rise up out of that middle of the pack 4-5 seed land, that's even with Smart and Fournier, is if you get something out of people on your roster right now that you didn't know. Like I said, if Neesmith turns into Duncan Robinson with friggin' kamikaze defense, and if Romeo becomes a 3-and-D guy or something, or Rob elevates into nip it at the heels of an all-star, that team all of a sudden has promise. If all of those guys are duds and those guys are back end of the rotation, 8-10 minutes a game guys, you're screwed. That's it. So, but
what do you think the Fournier market's going to look like, Sherrod? Because we've kind of got off that a little bit, but if they go that genre, it's going to be pretty important to keep them.
Fournier?
Yeah.
Fournier market.
I mean, it's going to be in the teens, maybe peaking at 20, but I think it'll be closer to like 15, 16 million. 15 or 60 million a year. And that's about what his value is. I mean, this is a guy who you have seen glimpses of really good play, but his best days in the NBA were on a crappy team in Orlando. And he was up and down with Boston. I mean, one night he can go 10 for 11. The next game he goes 1 for 11. Who the hell does that? That'd be Evan Fournier, people.
That was your Boston Celtics.
That's what that and Evan. So if that's what you're saying, Jimmy, then he's perfect to stay here.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeping him in my mind is much better than a TPE for him because we don't want to go down that road again.
Yeah, you might get a player like Fournier with a TPE.
Well done, Jimmy.
We only want TPEs.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they still got that other TP they got to figure out there. That's going to be interesting. Is that just going to disappear?
Sleep over that one. It's worth crumbs. The crumb TPE. There's like local bread and then there are the crumbs.
I really have no idea what they're thinking and like which way they're going to go with Fournier.
You know what they're going to be doing, Jimmy? They're going to be the whole Olympics. It's going to be like the war room or like that like White House room when they're doing like the undercover missions there. And they're just going to have like the earpieces in with Tatum when he's talking to Beal. And they're going to be like, how's he feel today? Are we getting any closer?
Yeah.
Because that is literally going to decide how they map out this next year. And luckily that is kind of how it works. Like Nick's losing his mind over Tatum going to the Olympics. This is the only way that they can figure out if that's in the cards.
If you say his name 3 times, he's going to appear in the chat, Bobby, and that's twice, okay? So you got to be careful, okay?
Alarm goes off.
You say it 3 times, and boom, he's there,
You better hope it's not the other way around. People were trying to gauge Tatum's interest in joining.
That's always the fear, right?
That's the direction you and John were going to go.
Just hope that's not happening.
That one.
Yeah.
Some other superstars.
Durant's going to recruit him.
I hated that, right? Oh, God. Keep Jason's name out of your mouth. That interview he did.
Yeah.
Because Tatum heard that. That was probably the highlight of Tatum's season. Kevin Durant said, I'm really good.
Yeah, he got verified right there.
Yep, verified. Kevin Durant said, "I'm awesome."
Spotify Greenroom.
The year before, it was 40,
LeBron, right?
It was 48 in a losing effort to LeBron in a hug fest in the locker room, and then this year it was Did you hear what Kevin said about me? That's pretty good. Sherrod's not having any of it.
I'm not, but the whole Tatum going to the Olympics thing, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
It's gonna be fun. We'll be doing post-game shows here, right, John?
What's that?
We'll be doing Olympic post-game shows.
See, you said that, and I don't think we're doing that.
What time are those
Does
games
the chat want
be?
it? Come on, chat. Get up. Come
What time
on.
are those games going to be?
Guys,
Get the crowd pumped up on Tim's link.
Tokyo time. I remember the year that the Sox opened in Tokyo, and like we sent out. It was still a big deal, and Daisuke and all of that stuff. And we sent out. I was working at Channel 7 at the time, and we sent Ridley out there, and he's friggin' calling me at like 3 a.m. Like it's like I sent in the stuff and blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, I gotta edit it. You know,
Yeah.
Like Bobby, I don't know what time we're doing those things, man. But
Bobby's up at. We get text from Bobby at 4 a.m, so he'll be up.
yeah,
It's like a 13-hour difference or something like that.
Why no Jalen on the team?
Surgery.
Huh? That's it, right? He's not ready.
Yeah.
He's not even close. Okay. I couldn't remember the timetable. His timetable's like September, October, right? He's right.
Yeah, he'll be pushing training camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Forget
We'll be
about
on the
it.
next one.
Yeah. We'll do the next one. All right. I think we're going to run over to Spotify in a little bit and do some chat if you guys want to hang out with us. But yeah, I literally forgot Jalen.
That's too bad. I mean, that's
fine.
summer.
But he would have been great there. He's fine for the start, though. Still, we think.
Yeah.
John, we got to do a documentary of that World Cup team because that was a lot of fun. I want to just reminisce.
Which one? The 2004 Greek Euro team? What are we talking about?
No, that one, definitely.
Someone's saying send Josue to Japan.
Oh, geez.
Oh, he would go.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Let me get a link going, and so we can put it in the chat here, and then we will head on over, and we'll talk with you guys for a little bit there. Haven't heard from some of our guys in a little bit, so that's pretty cool. And some of you guys can sit it out, but some of you guys, you're no, you're all welcome. Everybody join us. Is
the anti-Brad crew gonna approve Ime?
I think everybody's pretty.
They have no choice at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Sherrod, should we be throwing a party over this assistant hiring today? Seemed like a big deal. Will Hardy there.
Will's hey, have any of you guys talked with Will before?
Nope.
No.
Awesome dude. That's he's gonna be good. He's gonna be really, really good. Smart guy. I would put him on the head coach of the future track right now. It's not gonna happen in a year or two, but I think if he's here 4 or 5 years, by year 4 or 5, he'll be ready to move on.
What do you like about him? What do you like?
People are pretty
smart.
People are psyched to tell about that. Yeah,
he's just really smart. I mean, I don't know how better to put it. I'm not talking like Mike Zarin smart, that type of smart, but from a basketball coaching, working with guys, going through the data, connecting with players, not like I'm your buddy, but more like I'm your coach. That type of connection. I think Will's gonna be really good. Big fan of Will's.
Cool. Well, if Sherrod's a fan, then I'm a fan. So, good hire.
Hey, July 1st, I think we're just gonna hear Jay, Scott, all those guys. Now I don't know for sure, but it does, especially after the press conference today. Still, it feels like that whole staff's gonna be overhauled to some degree. Maybe like a guy or two stays.
The first one that realized that the ship was going to sail and he got off. Now he's in Detroit, so that was a smart move on his part.
He got out there to Detroit. Hey, maybe he knew #1 pick.
I would imagine that the coaches have all been told what their fate is by now. So
that was my biggest concern when they did the whole Danny's out and Brad is in. How was this going to affect those coaches who, some of them probably had opportunity to go elsewhere, but decided to stick around because, they wanted to work with Brad and stay here in Boston. And now it's like, oh, so sorry. You're
Meanwhile, they got those, I don't want to say sham interviews for the head coaching spot, but you had a pretty good sense the next Celtics coach wasn't going to be Larinaga or Allen or any one of those guys. They might be great coaches. I've heard a lot of great things about Jay, but you weren't going to move on from Brad Stevens to hire Jay Larinaga. Jimmy was going to blow up the show if that happened.
I knew that they weren't going to hire from within just because the way the season ended, you just knew they needed to get a completely fresh voice, because if the players were tuning out Brad, they were tuning out the whole, for all intents and purposes, the entire staff wasn't really getting through.
The only shot that any assistant coach would have had to get the head job was if the team played better. Like if Brad went out on a positive note, like they got to the conference finals and then Danny decided, he wanted to walk away and then they moved Brad, then you might think, well, maybe we want to keep one of these assistants as the next in charge. But the way this season went, hell no. Mm-hmm. You want to get rid of that stench as much as you can. This was a bad year for them. It really was.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, totally. That's why I was like way against. Nothing against those coaches, but I was just way against from hiring from within. Based on the way the whole season went, I was like, just can't do it. Need a fresh voice.
Meanwhile, that press conference today in Boston was one thing. That press conference in Portland tomorrow is going to be a completely different thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
if they ask the question.
Imagine after all the things the Celtics went through the last month or so, they had to go through that thing tomorrow. Like, whew, good luck.
It's going to be interesting. I don't
Sherrod, we were asking this at the beginning. Do you think anything relating to Billups and the momentum that it got in recent days or the last week or so had anything to do with Udoka being pushed to the front of the list with the Celtics, or you think he was their guy?
I think he was their guy. Because when you think about the people that we talked about connected with the job and connected with the opening, he was the only one that had a clear and undeniable positive connection with Jayson and Jaylen. That time when he was an assistant with the Olympic team with Pops and all that, Billups doesn't really have that type of relationship with those guys. He doesn't know them like that. Darvin Ham was another name out there. Darvin doesn't know those guys like that. Only one was Udoka. And Brad made it pretty clear. And every time Brad has talked about the job, and a couple times he's addressed it, he's talked about the importance of Jaylen and Jayson being in the loop. And so when you look at who he hired, you look at what he said, Udoka makes the most sense of the folks that were in the running for the job.
Mm-hmm. I said the same thing, Sherrod. I said it just felt like this was their guy. The way that, and of course it's a press conference, you're going to say all the right things, but I didn't get the vibe that this was the second or third choice. Like they went through the whole hiring process. I'm sure they did a very thorough vetting of all the candidates and the interviews. And at the end of the day, Udoka was the guy who rose to the top and said the right things and had those that connection with Wick that Wick mentioned. The 2-hour conversation and all this stuff. And I think he's going to be a good leader. He needs to be a good leader. That's and not to say Brad wasn't, but if he can get through to these guys and push them and make them want to be, to quote Brad, the best versions of themselves, then it's going to be a good hire. And I think he's going to be a coach that will be around for, this isn't going to be one of those awful one and done types coaches. It doesn't happen in Boston really that often, right? I mean, if you even think about it, the Celtics haven't fired a coach in like 20 years. If you think about it, Doc, they didn't fire. Brad, they didn't fire. And I feel like they give these coaches, Wick likes to give these guys a chance to really prove themselves. And I feel like he's going to do that here too.
So the link is open. It's in the chat. We're going to head over there in a little bit. Guys, want to just kind of leap all in together rather than linger? Let me just make sure we have it set and we'll head over. So again, for those of you new to this, download the Spotify Greenroom is what they're called, what the kids are calling it. Spotify Greenroom, formerly Locker Room. We are sponsored by Spotify Greenroom, so this is a thing that we do from time to time. We'll probably do at least one more this week. So come join us, hang out, join the chat. We'll go for whatever, as long as we've got people in the room. And so come hang out with us, guys. Any final thoughts here on Udoka? And again, we can get into some of the Billups stuff on the chat as well, and just hear people's kind of franchise thoughts and ideas. Definitely some regulars here in the YouTube chat who I think will be joining us. But anything before we wrap this up?
Is this the one introducing Udoka and other Celtics talk?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
get
the
in
one.
there. Yes. Are you in? It's been the link was emailed to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Texted.
Yep.
Texted to you guys, emailed to Sherrod because he's an Android guy.
Because he's a boomer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all
My
right.
final thoughts.
You mean the device that's used in 78% of the technology out there? Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Android users love that stat.
Look,
Yeah.
Sherrod
Damn
moved
right.
on. Sherrod moved on from AOL, and that's all. That's all from his AOL. From
You
his
got rid of the
AOL,
AOL email?
from his AOL email like a year ago, and that's all.
Did
that
he
matters.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Dude, that email address has like 275,000 messages.
Yeah.
There's some big sources in that email address.
Right. How many scoops have you missed because you stopped looking at that email?
Because he
You're
didn't.
right.
No, because he didn't hear that you've got mail. He didn't hear that, so you missed a lot of. You've got mail. You've got sources.
Anyway, come hang out with us, everybody. We're gonna head over there. I'm in there right now. We're gonna head over in a minute.
All right. Jimmy,
All right,
final thought?
My final thoughts were, good day for the Celtics. I just thought it was a good press conference overall. I know it was a little bit too short for John.
Brad's 2 for 2, right?
He wanted more. I'm not going that far yet because we got to wait and see how things go. I think
Yeah, it was a little too short.
the things that needed to happen happened so far. So
Yeah.
in that sense, good for Brad, I guess. But I'm going to leave it at that, and I'm interested to see, how if the players have any sort of interaction that we see, through social media or whatever the team puts out over the next couple months to see how they're sort of getting together with their new coach. I mean, they've definitely got to hit the ground running. So it'd be nice to see them getting together in the offseason at points. I know Tatum obviously will if Udoka joins Team USA. So we'll see.
We shall see. One thing we didn't mention, I do want to talk about in the green room. I was going to talk about a little bit here. It is interesting to me that Marcus Smart, to the best of my knowledge, has yet to be introduced.
You mean Kemba Walker?
Kemba Walker, rather, has yet to be introduced in OKC.
I haven't seen that.
Which is interesting. Total radio silence from Kemba since the trade, outside of that Athletic article that had a bunch of things about him being somewhat disgruntled. We haven't heard a peep.
And then heartbroken.
Heartbroken. The next day we found
We're
out.
not really sure how he feels anymore.
Active on draft night for sure.
So that's interesting to me.
Picks.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. So another topic we can possibly talk about, the Brad haters have died down like crazy. It is interesting. Everybody, they got their pound of flesh.
You know what, Karen?
Huh?
Karen.
I hope Karen shows up. I want it.
I do too.
I do too. All right, we're heading over now, guys.
I get to criticize him as a GM now.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us here. Sorry, Josue couldn't make it. He was on another assignment, but he'll hopefully be with us later
Tinder
on.
date.
Later
He's on his way to Japan.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.